Now, starting off with Daily Trust, boldly in front, crisis in Northwest Development Commission over scholarship scheme. At the top, police launch probe as 5 children die inside abandoned vehicle. All right. 2025 UTME over 75% scored below 200. Below 200. All right, still on Daily Trust, Constitution Review, Insecurity, Tax Bill, top agenda as the National Assembly resumes today. We'll come to the bottom. 25 killed as bandits and vigilantes clash in Bauchi. And a new NNPCL leadership supporting my $20 billion refinery, says Dangote. Gaza starve as Israel plans expanded operations, and woman in court for marrying 2 husbands. All right, these are the stories we have on the front page of Daily Trust. Do out to grab yourself a copy and keep yourself informed.
Moving on to the next newspaper, we have the Guardian newspaper. Right in front, we have Nigeria risks losing youth generation to drug abuse, a mental health crisis. That is on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. Up top on the left, we have CSO's demand Akpabio's resignation as court affirms conviction of a returning officer. That's on page 7 of the Guardian newspaper. Next, we have FEC prioritizes local industry under Nigeria First policy. On the top right, we have 77% of UTME candidates score below 200. That is on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper. Down below, we have Electoral Act crucial bills up for debate as Senate House of Reps resume today. We have Dangote hails Tinubu for appointments in energy sector. Under that, we have the Chiku warns against state-sponsored repression of as EFCC offers reasons for activists VDM's arrest. We have Plateau killings, police arrest more suspects and recover illegal arms in fresh raids. You can check that out on page 29 of The Guardian. We have imperative of improved aviation operations before Fly Nigeria Act, which is an editorial piece. We have terrorism parliamentary group advises US against designating Nigeria. That is on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper. You can go through it to get more information.
All right, so moving away from that now to Punch. Boldly on Punch on insecurity, reps Benue government clash as NAS resumes today. Lawmakers blame Alia for killings. State Assembly members meet over reps invitation. And still on Punch, federal government approves 1.8 trillion naira road project, a new contract. On student loan, minister meets VCs as NANS block Lagos-Ibadan highway. And revenue collection inefficiency cost power firms 965 billion naira. Concerns as over 1.5 million UTME candidates score below 200. 8,000 terrorist bandits killed under Tinubu, Defense Minister says. And Makinde moves 5 commissioners in fresh cabinet shakeup. Major petrol diesel price cut expected over crude slump. Those are the stories we have there on Punch this morning. Do out to grab yourself a copy and keep yourself informed. Now, joining us, we have the program director, Daily Trust Foundation, Dr. Theophilus Abba. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right, I would love to touch on every other stories, but the aspect of education beats me. Over 75% score below 200 in our UTME examinations, that is JAMB. Now, we know that JAMB is one exam that you should be scoring 200, over 400. We saw some people score 400 and above, but we're having over 75% score below 200. Is this our educational system? Or is this parents, putting their children to actually read their books? Or is this distractions from social media? Where would you put this to?
Or are the examinations getting more harder than they used to be? So what are the reasons behind it?
Well, the issue is that I think JAMB is one of the examinations that tests the aptitude of students, candidates who want to enter into the university. When you talk about an aptitude test, you are testing two things: speed and accuracy. Now, how good is this guy in this subject area? How fast can he respond to questions? Now, so when we talk about students scoring, less than 200, the average they did score to 50 per subject because they have 4 subjects they write. They don't score up to 50 per subject, and that means that it's actually below average. Well, you see, what I know is this: JAMB is tough. From the perspective of somebody who understands how the questions are set. For instance, JAMB will not come in English language. For instance, you are given a test. Okay, Mr. A traveled to Zaria, and then he met so and so situation in Zaria. They won't ask you what's the name of Mr. A, what's the name of Mr. B. They ask you questions that were put as if to read between the lines. So if a student is not trained, to think on his feet, to be able to read between the lines, not to just expect the questions, the answers, to stare him in the English language text, you understand, he won't be able to get the answer. English language in JAMB is different from the English language they write in WAEC. WAEC will tell you, ask you questions from the text. But JAMB will ask you questions you're able to read in between, so that you put on your thinking cap, and that is the advanced level of learning. You shouldn't be spoon fed. What I noticed is that because my children, have written JAMB and they still write JAMB. Now, what I noticed is that the kind of teaching in our secondary schools don't really prepare the students for JAMB. What they learn in secondary school prepare them to write WAEC. So you see some of them, they have their 5 credits in WAEC, English and Maths. They have all the requirements, but when it gets to JAMB, they don't score so high.
I want to believe that this is because JAMB is preparing for the higher institution where you need that critical thinking to survive. Yes,
but what I'm trying to drive at is that even the kind of teaching, learning they do in secondary schools don't really prepare them for JAMB. It prepares them for WAEC, but not for JAMB. Because if you look at the curriculum, because I did a little bit of teaching. Now, if you look at the curriculum for JAMB, it's a bit different from the curriculum for WAEC. So I'm thinking that there is need for our teachers, to align with the kind of content, the kind of knowledge that the children need to acquire before they go in for JAMB. Because if they continue to teach only for WAEC, they will have students who pass the WAEC but will not be able to to do well in JAMB. And if you look at those who do well in JAMB, there are people who have taken time to study past questions over a decade. Some of them have been able to solve almost all the past questions for the last 10 years in each of the subjects. So, and they now discover that, this is how they ask this question, this is how they respond. If it is mathematics, this is the kind of question that came out, in the last 4, 5, 6 years, and this is how to respond to them. They familiarize themselves with it.
All right,
But at secondary schools, they don't teach up to that level.
All right, I believe that's the story that piqued my interest, but let's hear from you. All
right, as we can see on the top right of the newspaper, the National Assembly resumes today, and with all that is happening in the country, is there going to be a constitution review? Are there going to be talks on insecurity, the tax bill, and what do you think are the top agendas of the National Assembly as they resume?
Well, I think Nigerians are waiting for the final word in terms of the tax bill, because we want to know our fate. What aspects of the bills will sail through? We have the bills that will affect, how much we pay as tax. For instance, we have been told that we'll be paying 10%, maybe at the end of the year, and the next 2 years we'll start paying 50% as VAT. To some of us, it's quite high. Then some of the issues around the implementation of the tax policy, they are saying that, you must have a bank account. And for you to have a bank account, you must have your tax card, So does it mean that those in rural areas will go and procure tax card? Are you going to tax the rural man or rural woman? It's a question that we're asking. Then we are talking about inheritance tax, which is to us is a bit strange. How is it going to work? Then the sharing formula of VAT, is still being debated. So we are expecting that perhaps now the National Assembly will sit down and clearly look at this law and see what is practicable. It's not just everything that is in the law that is practicable. For instance, if you say, you are going to disband or TET fund, and because you are having other, the people who run the investors say, look, this TET fund accept. Over the years, they've been able to help us with capital projects. So if you not disband it, you're actually creating a setback. We have to choose between TET fund and NEL fund. So NEL fund just started, and we are hearing so much about crisis. So the whole lot of the National Assembly needs to sit down to actually look at the tax bill and ensure that what they pass will be in line with the desires of Nigeria, what Nigerians can afford. Because this government is known for too much of tax. And so if you are going to approve additional tax, it's like you are inconsiderate.
All right.
Then the Electoral Act, there are some amendments being proposed for the Electoral Act. One of them is that we have to accept anything electronic as part of the voting process. You will say, it's just for viewing, you say beavers and what do you call it? And the platform that you viewed it, so it's just for viewing, not it's of no implication. And we cannot accept that. You have to, if an electronic process is involved, it has to be accepted as part of the electoral process.
All right, so we're looking forward to, the reps and the National Assembly to see, how they would navigate and put in these important policies that are on the lips of Nigerians. But on Guardian, something piqued our attention. It says Nigeria risks losing youth generation to drug abuse and mental health crisis. What do you make of that?
Well, if you look at the data, I think they have some data there from UNODC, NDLA, even on a daily basis. If you follow reports by NDLA, it's staggering. Here NDLA has impounded drugs, 1.something billion naira. The value of those drugs, 1.something billion, 2 billion, 100 million. The kind of drugs that they are, impounding and the arrests they are making. It shows that we are now a consumer nation. In the past, Nigeria was seen as maybe one of the countries where drugs were trafficked to other parts of the world. So they will now say, they arrested this person, was taking this drug to so part of the world. Now, unfortunately, we are now a consumer nation, and that is why we are having this crisis. Now, if you look at the youth, being addicted to drugs, it's actually an evidence that why, number one, that they are not busy. It shows that some of them are not busy. It shows that some of them don't have proper home training. Because if a youth is busy, he cannot spend all his time taking drugs. If you see some of these guys who take drugs, practically they are idle. They don't do anything. Maybe they are unemployed. Maybe they don't even have any skills. So they just have to run around, commit whatever crime that needs to be committed, and then get these drugs to take. There is some wealthy Nigerians, they have so much money, their children they can just give money to their children, they don't even know what to do with it, they buy drugs. And where I stay, there's a mental health hospital, around us. The first time they bought a duplex. The second time they bought another duplex. They bought a third duplex. And every day people are coming, very close to where we stay. Every day people are coming with young men, And these are not people on the street. They're from wealthy families. So I know that mental health crisis it's a very serious issue. And government, but I'm thinking that even parents have a lot of roles to play. You don't just allow your children to access money they don't even need, and they buy drugs, buy all sorts of things, and so it's their generation and all this and all that. I don't think we should allow it. There has to be a measure of curtailing this thing, not just government alone, not just NDLA, but parents must come into it.
All right, moving on now, still on reps and also the killings that are happening in Benue State. First of all, let's talk about insecurity in general. So we're going to put like two stories together quickly because we're almost running out of time. 25 killed as bandits and vigilantes clashed in Bauchi. We're seeing the Minister of Defense talking about over 88 terrorists and bandits killed over time in this administration. And then we're also seeing what is happening in Benue. And lawmakers are saying that the governor of Benue State is to be held responsible for the killings that are happening in the state. What do you make of the killings in general and, you know, what is happening in Benue across other states, seeing that even vigilantes and people who are meant to protect are also losing their lives in the process?
Okay, what is clear is that the killings in Benue is different from the kind of killings that took place in Bauchi. You know, if you read the story of the Bauchi, some forests are idle, you know, and some bandits from Zamfara have invaded those forests, they invested the forest, and they've been operating since 2020, 2022 without any serious challenge from the security agencies. And so when they capture anybody from a village or a rural community or a town, they take the person to the forest, negotiate, get the ransom, and they become richer. And that is what is happening in Bauchi. Both Yankari and Alkali, there are some forests there where these guys have invaded. Now, that of Benue, as I say, is different, is because it is a clash between farmers and, I mean, let me use the word violent herders, because there are some herders who are not violent, or killer herders. Now, and it's actually the invasion of communities, towns, and killings, and all those and all that. And the reason why the governor is blamed is because there was an anti-open grazing law in place. And that law controlled the activities of herders and other users of the land, you understand? Now, when he came, he suspended the law.
Okay.
And there is nothing that has been used to replace it. There are no locations for people to do their grazing. They just go everywhere, and then you have all these crises. So I think they are totally different. And let me just say, as my own last word is that we have to create a security arrangement for rural communities. We can't allow them to just be killed by bandits and whatsoever.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Dr. Theophilus, for joining us on the show. We've come to the end of Daybreak this morning. To our listeners, I hope you've picked something from our conversation this morning. I would say, Hawa, it's been quite informative. But then again, we have to go. We have to go. My name is Lian Ogazi. See ya.
And I'm Hawa Adamikiawa. Thank you for always being with us.